Welcome to the Simple Marketing Solutions podcast, where we provide easy to follow marketing advice for small businesses. I'm your host, Ameeta, and today I have the great pleasure of interviewing Jessica Tomac, who is a mentor in the community and a visionary, helping people who desire to build legacies. She's been at Edward Jones for 10 years and has built her business partnering with women to empower them with all aspects of their finances by helping them understand and know what they can expect from their money now and in the future with simple processes that she applies. Jessica is a limited partner with the firm and has earned several designations, including Gold Standard of Wealth, Financial Planning as a Certified Financial Planner. So welcome to today's episode. And today we're going to be discussing how to build your financial future and the essential strategies for women. Hi, Jessica. It is so lovely to have you here today with us. Before we get into everything finances for women, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be here today. My name is Jessica Tomac. I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones, and I came to Edward Jones and decided to become a financial advisor after having multiple financial advisors myself and feeling like they didn't understand what I was trying to do or what things meant to me, or I didn't have a place I could ask questions and feel like that was a real partnership. So decided to go in and become a financial advisor myself, and it made it my mission to help career-focused women create their wealth strategies and understand their finances.
You know, and you mentioned something there where you've been to other financial advisors and felt that they didn't understand you or give you the answers that you were looking for. And so you've gone out and done it on your own, which is fantastic. I love that. But what do you feel with the woman that you're helping right now? What do you feel is their main driver for seeking out a financial advisor?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of different reasons why they are looking for financial advisors. So one, when I have the career focused woman, she's busy, right? She might have kids at home. She's getting pulled in multiple directions, has a high stress career job, wants to be making sure they're doing the right things with their money. Having enough money isn't the concern. It's just making it work the right ways is a bigger concern because they don't have time to be researching things. So they're really looking for a partner and an avenue that can help them manage that cash flow and help them determine, okay, here's our next step. Here's how we're going to do that. Because they don't have the capacity. Folks often say, oh, I'll get to it later. These women, they don't want to wait till later, but they don't have time now either.
And so how, I know that you've gone in here because you wanted to do things differently, but how different is it, the way that you see people and the way that other financial planners work?
Yeah, great question. So I find a lot of folks, they just want to take your money, right? They don't necessarily care about your goals. They're like trying to just sell their next ticket item to you. And what you're trying to tell them about, hey, my kid's college or this emergency fund, they're like, oh, I don't do that, right? I literally had someone say, oh yeah, I don't do emergency funds. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't do emergency funds? Like, this is like 101. You can't invest until you have this. And I think it's a really a holistic approach. And people often say, well, why are you asking these questions? And I want to know about their tax person. I want to know about their, durable power of attorney documents. I want to know all this stuff because it really is a holistic approach. And I'm really looking to find any hole in the boat, because if we can identify where the holes are, we can plug them. If you don't know where the holes are, you don't even know where to start. And then a lot of times folks don't do anything. So it's really that partnership. I think about it like a wheel on the spokes, and then the hub. We're the hub. We're that centerpiece. You've got all these spokes. That's life and all the things going on in your life. We're going to help you bring it center and focus on, okay, here's your next step. Here's the piece we're working on based on what you're telling us. and really being able to pivot, because we can say, oh man, this is great. This is what our top priority is today. And 6 months from now, life changes. And that might not be your top priority. We might have to change things and adjust what we were doing. So I think just being flexible and understanding that it's not this great laid plan. Oh, somebody said, oh, I did that 5 years ago. 5 years ago, like my life doesn't even look the same 5 years ago.
Exactly. Everything changes, right? And
It
you have to be
does.
able to be flexible especially in today's times, with what's happening out there in the economy, in the world, with people's businesses, and their financial situations as well. So that's great that, you take that approach of being more hands-on and adapting and helping them to understand why. Because I think sometimes that's probably one of the more scary things when we as business owners, when we think of going in and seeing a financial advisor, or even if you're not a business owner, financial advisors often have this stigma attached that, you guys are scary.
Right.
And it can feel confronting because we don't know enough going in there. But I love that you break it down for them. Um, in your process of onboarding somebody, how do you come up with the strategies that may support them?
Yeah, so we do a few different things to help us understand where we even start, right? And we spend a lot of time really understanding where they're at today and where they want to be. What does that look like? Whether it's tomorrow, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years, what does that look like? And we have some questions we kind of walk through and figure out what their priorities are. And we kind of rank things of, this is our top three. Those are where we're going to spend most of our time focusing on making sure we can achieve them. But we also know that these other 10 things are important to us. They're just not at the top, right? And really always
Mm.
being focused on those are changing, right? And something will occur from one year to the next that maybe shifts what those top three were. And really making sure that we're staying focused on what is most important to you at all times.
Mm. And I like that, what's important for us as the person on the other end, because what you might feel as the financial advisor is important could be quite different um, to the person that's going through that and is putting their trust in you as well.
Well, and like you said,
From
it can be
Mm.
scary, right? So
Yeah.
so in some cases they're like, oh, I don't have enough money, or oh, what if,
Mm.
I had a gentleman recently say, well, his wife actually found me online because she liked the fact that I work with women. And I said, oh, I love working with ladies and widows. And so she was like, I really like her. And her husband, we were having a conversation. And I said, well, I don't know that I'm going to be the best fit for you, because you're the guy who goes to the doctor's office, tells them the prescription you want and the strength, and you just tell them to write it. Like, you're not going to do that with me. Like, otherwise you don't need me. I'm not your order taker.
Yeah.
So his wife was like, no, 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 what if he doesn't do that? And I just laughed. I said, but we have to make sure it's a good fit. Like, we don't take everybody on, because I really want to be able to help those people who want my help and want that partnership. And it
Mm.
is so different. We laugh when we say folks are like family, right? We tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you're doing great things,
Mm.
we tell you, oh, this was great, you should be so proud. If you did something not so great, we're like, what were you thinking? But being able to have that open relationship and that dialogue, you don't
Yeah.
have to do it all right, but you have to have open dialogue so that you can navigate those waters.
Yeah. And I think that, when I said scary before, I think that that actually is the main point, is that there isn't that open dialogue. You go in and you're just told, this is what you need to do. There's no ifs or buts about it. And you don't feel like you are a partner, like you've described, where if I came in to you, it sounds like it would be an amazing experience. I would feel like we are partnered and working together towards my goals, my vision for my future, both short term and long term, which is It's empowering as
Yeah.
well, which I think is really important because it makes you want to do more, want to be better as well in that
Mhm.
position of your finances.
Well, and it takes the scary out of it, right?
Yeah,
So once you start to have that relationship, you're no longer scared. You're excited to talk to the financial advisor. You're excited to see what progress you've made. And it is that partnership. So you're like, oh, even if I messed up some, it's okay. Like we all do this and it's
yeah,
okay, right? I had a lady and she was like, I love that you call me about the decision of what to do. Like, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And here's what it means if you pick one versus the other. And they're always feeling like they're learning a little nugget or two.
mm,
Not that they have to know everything, but
mm,
things are less scary when you're more secure and have a better understanding of why and what they do. And
yeah.
money is no different.
It's true. It's definitely no different. Um, you know, talking about finances and talking about feeling empowered, are there strategies that you recommend where we can sort of just set and forget, and not have to have us continuously thinking about, ah, I need to be doing this with my finances. I need to be saving X amount. And then it becomes another list item on your to-do list for the day, for the month, and for the year. Are there autopilot ways that you recommend people can get on board with saving?
Yeah, so not everyone offers this, but one of the things we do is we offer, we call it the income manager. So we help manage your income. So what
Mm,
we do is we have your deposits coming into us. We're paying the bills out of that same kind of account, but then we're watching it. We're watching the income when it hits a certain level. We're saying, okay, that's your emergency fund. Now, when it hits this next level, we're saying, okay, now we're going to move these to CDs as your next step. Now we're moving it to this, but we're managing that for you. We're watching that cash flow. We're looking at all the avenues. And at the end of the year, we're going to give you a little report that says, hey, you think you're spending this, but really this is what it is, whether it's more or less, it doesn't matter. But these are facts, right? This is not emotion. Here's the
mm,
data. But ultimately, you didn't have to think about it every day, every week, every month. It was happening, but it was happening with a purpose, not just
mm,
what I find is a lot of career focused women, their bank accounts just grow because they don't have time to deal with it. And the money, they're not spending it, right? Because they make great money, but they're not putting it to work on a regular basis. They just don't
mm.
have time.
Yeah. And it is the putting to work on a regular basis that I think is the most important thing that can sorry, help you to secure your finances in the future. Because, like we said at the beginning, things are changing so much and at such a fast rate that if you've got that extra money, wouldn't it be great if it was actually working for you towards your future?
Right. And I think if you think about that and also think about your taxes, if you can be tax efficient and growing wealth tax efficiently, like that is so important versus just thinking, oh, I just let all this money grow in my bank account and I had to pay a little bit of tax on it. Great. But the tax laws are changing, right? Things are shifting. And we know this is probably the first time in history we know that the tax laws, when those sunset in January of 2026, they're going to impact us. So start doing things now that help you later and really
Mm,
mitigate some of those taxes. All of that stuff is conversations I'm having with my clients right now.
mm. Yeah, really important to be aware of what is changing out there in the environment from a legal perspective as well, and how that's going to impact you now and in the future as well.
Right.
Jessica, when we talk about strategies, is there any advice that you would share with our audience, that is applicable no matter where they live, to their business and to their financial situation?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things that kind of come top of mind for me. One, people often don't think about it as part of their finances, but it absolutely has a direct impact with your finances, and that is life insurance. So if you have a young family, you're the breadwinner, really understanding term insurance is something that you should have. It's inexpensive. You make sure it's the appropriate amount. Very important, especially as your income levels change, the amount of coverage you should have should also change. In addition to that, if you're in your latter years, really making sure understanding what the long-term care benefits would be and insurances, because that can be extremely expensive, and many women will live by themselves and need some sort of assistance. The number is over 75% of women right now. And so really planning for that and having a strategy in place, I think applies to everybody in one of those areas. It doesn't mean both, right? It's usually one or the other. And the
Yeah.
other thing that I believe applies to everyone is really just making sure you understand what an emergency fund is for you. That number isn't the same for everyone, but understand what your number is. And then what you should be doing with any money over that and how that looks from both a tax perspective, a business perspective, many different ways.
Mm. Yeah, that I think is also really valuable advice, those three tips. Thank you for that. The life insurance, I know so many people, they think, oh, I'm young, I don't need to worry about that right now. I'll get to that later. But you never know. And if you are the sole breadwinner or, you know, earning the higher income in the family, or even if you're a sole parent, as we see quite often these days, that it is important to think about the future, think about the next generation as well, your kids, and what would happen if anything, if you couldn't work as well.
Yeah,
And
I teach at a widow's retreat, and
mm,
the first year I went, I in my mind thought it was going to be a bunch of 80-year-old women, right? Much to my surprise, when I got there, a third of the population was less than 45 years old.
wow.
So know that it isn't, life is not a given, right?
Yeah.
And more than ever, those young families need life insurance. And then there was a large portion that were from 46 to 55. And the folks that were, well into their 70s and 80s, they were actually the minority of the whole group. So it was an interesting, my perception the first year. And then I
Mm,
even said, well, that's just the first year. It was a fluke, right? But it wasn't a fluke. Year after year, it is way more young people with young kids than it is the older population. So,
mm,
and sometimes folks think, oh, I have it at work, right? And they don't need anything else.
mm,
But if you change jobs or lose your job because you
mm.
can't work, well, now you don't have any. And so really
Yes.
think about those things.
Yeah. And that would have been a real eye opener to go to that retreat and really see the numbers year on year. And, it's actually, it's sad and it's scary at the same time to think that the majority of those widows are in that younger age bracket, and they've got, so much to consider for the future and to put into place that helps them now and helps their kids as well, as their kids get older as well financially, and giving them that support. So yeah. um
And I've seen the
uh
impact of those that have the life insurance and those that haven't. And it's significant. In fact, one of
mm,
my clients called and her husband had died unexpectedly.
mm,
And she was like, I don't think we ever got that life insurance. And I said, actually, he was denied life insurance, but he did what I told him, and that he actually increased his through work the most he could get without a physical. And I said, so you have it through his work. You need to call them. And she was ecstatic, because had
mm,
they not done that, she would have lost her home. And here she just lost her husband. She wouldn't have been able to stay in her home. She would have had to find a job and work full time. And that life insurance afforded her some flexibility to make sure they could stay where they were and give her some time to find daycare and find a job.
yeah, wow. That would have been totally, a light in her day, to be able to feel that she was taken care of, and she didn't even know that. And I think that that also brings me to a question about the importance of having that open conversation, obviously, with you as the financial advisor, but with your family. In that situation, like you said, she wasn't even aware of what her husband had done. Do you often see that?
We do. In fact, I see it more than I'd like.
Mm,
Often, because we do dig so deep into people's lives, we feel like most of the stuff. We don't leave a lot of rocks unturned. So oftentimes we find that people will call us and they say, I don't even know where to start. So and so, my dad died, my uncle, that whoever it was, I don't even know if he has debt. Like, because they weren't talking about that
mm,
as a family, or whoever this executor was going to be, or what this looked like. And I was able to say, well, you know what, I've met with them. Here's where they're at. Here's where they have loans. Here's who you need to call, and at least get them started on that path. But if you don't have someone who knows that stuff, your family is really left in the lurch, not even knowing where to start
yeah.
or how to find your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, there's a book called The Bottom Drawer Book. And it's a book that helps you to write down all of these types of things, things about your finance, your insurance, or where you put hidden stuff, or, all these little bits and pieces, access to logins, etc. And it's just a book that, is great to just write everything down, know it's in one place for that moment where something could happen and somebody else needs to take on the responsibility and figure it all out. At least it's the starting point. And yeah, what you're saying just reminded me of that book.
Yeah.
Um, do you how do you try and get people to have more open conversations? Because I know talking about finance in families, it can be a bit strenuous, and can feel like a bit of a burden, and quite often, ends up in arguments. Are there approaches that you would recommend families take?
Yeah, I think it depends if you're talking within your own family, in the same household, or if you're talking about with other extended family members, because I feel like those conversations are different,
Mm,
versus if you have, like, a husband and wife and they're, talking about their finances, and we're talking about budget. That can get very stressful and very heated, very quickly. Well, she spends too much money on Starbucks. Well, he spends it on tools, right? And
yeah.
sometimes you got to work through some of that. And oftentimes is what I find is, if we can get to the root of why there's financial stress, and there is always a root, really understanding how they grew up with money, what that looked like for them. Often, if we can identify that, then we can say, okay, well, when this happens, this is the trigger, and this is why it makes me feel insecure, right? So we need to do this, not because that's the perfect answer, but this will make this person feel more comfortable. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to work on the next step, right?
Mm,
So really trying to identify what that root cause is, I think,
mm,
is so important, because everyone was raised with money differently. My
mm,
family didn't talk about it. We struggled with finances. They, couldn't make their bills from day to day, and, all kinds of financial stresses and bankruptcy. So I was the type who would just squirrel it away, not knowing when this shoe was going to drop, or what bad thing could happen. Where somebody else, they feel good when they, give people gifts, right? So they're spending all the time, because when they are giving people stuff, they feel good, but they're giving away more than they have, right? So you
yeah.
have to really understand where people are coming from, to why your behavior really is the way it is. And then we can address that, and build a strategy that actually still makes you feel good, but
Mm,
empowered to do your other things too.
mm. No, that's great advice. Getting to the root of it, that totally makes sense. To be able to have those open conversations, you need to understand where each person is coming from,
Mhm.
before it ending up in an argument for no reason. So
Right.
thank you for that. Before we do close off, was there any other useful information you felt that you wanted to impart on our audience?
I really think probably the biggest piece is, often hear folks, say they're too busy, right? They're
Mm,
too busy with their kids, their business, the whatever. make it a priority. Find someone who can be a true partner with you, because then it's not work. To your point, it's another thing on the list, another thing to keep track of. If you have a true partner with the finances, it then can take that load and that burden off, finding the right person to do those things with. And if I tell folks, I could get in the car, I'm in Michigan, and I could go south and know I'm going to get to Florida. I might end up in Texas first, but I would get there. With a GPS and a map, I can take a straight shot down. The same thing is true with your finances. Can you make it to your end destination on your own? Yes, probably, likely. Will it be the most efficient? Probably not. Will you have made some poor choices? Likely, right? Because you can't be the expert in everything. So partner with an expert.
Yeah, love that. Partner with an expert. It's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for all your valuable insights and the tips that you've shared for business owners, for anybody really at the end of the day. So I really appreciate your time today, Jessica.
Well, thanks for having me again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening today. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I hope you find value from today's episode. And remember, if you've got friends and colleagues looking for inspiration as they grow their business, share this podcast with them. Follow me on Instagram at Holistic Vision Consultancy, or check out my website, holisticvision.com.au. Until next week, to your success, my friend.